The words hit me like a physical blow. Did you put it in his food? He mustn't taste it. I'd returned to retrieve my wallet, left it on the table like an idiot. The restaurant was nearly empty, just closing staff moving between tables. I was halfway to our booth when I heard her voice, low and urgent, coming from the kitchen doorway. The waiter's response was muffled, but her laugh was unmistakable. Satisfied. Predatory. I stepped back into the shadows and watched my wife through the kitchen window. She was adjusting her dress, smoothing her hair. The waiter was holding something, a small vial. She took it from him and slipped it into her purse. Poison. She was poisoning me. My name is Alexandra. I'm 34. And in that moment, I made a decision that would reshape everything. I pulled out my phone and dialed the number I'd been avoiding for months. My father's private investigator, the one he'd offered to hire when he first expressed concerns about my marriage. I'd refused then. I refused to believe my husband was capable of what Dad suspected. Turns out, I was the one who needed investigating. I need you to document something, I said quietly into the phone. My wife just poisoned my dinner at Marcelo's restaurant. The waiter is involved. I need evidence. I need proof. And I need it before I go home and pretend to eat that food. The investigator didn't ask questions. Just said, give me 30 minutes. I watched my wife leave the restaurant, completely unaware that her entire world was about to collapse. And I realized something chilling. I'd married a woman capable of murder. Now I was going to prove it. The investigator arrived in 20 minutes with a camera and a partner. We documented everything. The waiter handling the vial. My wife's conversation with him, captured on audio through the restaurant's security system. The exchange of money she'd paid him to poison me. The whole transaction methodical and deliberate. How long has this been happening? The investigator asked. I have no idea, I said. My hands were shaking now. Tonight's the first time I've heard about it. But even as I said it, I was calculating. The recent arguments. The way she'd been asking about my life insurance. The new boyfriend she'd been texting. I'd seen his name on her phone once. Marcus. The waiter's name was Marcus. She'd been planning this for weeks. I went home that night and didn't eat the dinner she'd prepared. I told her I'd already eaten at the restaurant, that I wasn't hungry. She watched my face carefully, gauging whether I was lying. I'd become very good at lying by then. You should eat something, she said, pushing the plate toward me. You need your strength. For what? I wanted to ask. For dying? Instead, I smiled and told her I'd eat it later, that I was exhausted from work. She seemed disappointed but didn't push. That night, I slept in the guest room. She didn't follow me. Just lay in our bed, probably calculating how long the poison would take to work. Whether she'd call 911 or let me die quietly. Whether Marcus would be her alibi or her next victim. By morning, I had copies of everything. Audio recordings. Photographs. The investigator's full report, documented and dated. I had her dead to rights. Now I just had to decide what to do with the information. I didn't call the police immediately. Instead, I called a divorce lawyer and a forensic accountant. If my wife was planning to murder me for the insurance payout, then she'd likely been preparing financially. Moving assets. Setting up accounts. Building her exit strategy. The forensic accountant found everything within 72 hours. She'd transferred nearly $200,000 to a separate account. She'd opened a line of credit in a fake name. She'd been researching life insurance claims and how long investigations took. She'd even started researching countries without extradition treaties. She wasn't just planning my murder. She was planning her escape. I also discovered that Marcus the waiter wasn't actually a waiter. He was her cousin. They'd grown up together. She'd been paying him to kill me, $5,000 up front, $50,000 more once I was dead and the insurance cleared. The poison was ricin. Slow acting. Painful. She'd wanted me to suffer before I died. I made copies of all the financial documents and sent them to my lawyer with instructions. File for divorce and freeze all joint accounts immediately. Attach the investigator's report about the poisoning. Make it clear that she attempted to murder me. Then I made a second call. To the police. I didn't mention the poisoning attempt directly. Instead, I reported suspicious financial transactions. Potential fraud. A woman acting erratically. They could investigate the poisoning separately. I had documentation if they needed it. By afternoon, the police were at our house with a warrant to search our financial records. My wife's face went white when she understood what was happening. What did you do? She hissed at me. What you were doing to me, I said calmly. I'm just ahead of you. The arrest happened at dinner time. She was charged with attempted murder, conspiracy, and fraud. The waiter, her cousin Marcus, was arrested separately. Both of them denied everything until the investigators played the audio recordings. Her face crumbled when she heard her own voice asking if he'd put the poison in my food. I watched from the gallery during her arraignment. She looked smaller in the orange jumpsuit. Diminished. The woman who'd planned my death with such careful precision now sat in front of a judge, understanding that her own plan had been documented and weaponized against her. She'd wanted to poison me slowly. Instead, I destroyed her quickly. The forensic accountant's findings were damning. The financial transfers showed clear intent. The researched articles about poisoning methods, the life insurance policy she'd increased 6 months prior, the separate accounts and fake names, it all painted a picture of premeditated murder. Her lawyer argued she was mentally unstable, that she'd been under stress, that the whole thing was a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. No one believed him. The prosecutor presented the case methodically. The poisoning attempt, the financial preparation, the conspiracy with her cousin, the emails where she discussed timing and logistics. Everything I'd documented, everything the investigators had captured. My wife sat silent throughout, her eyes never meeting mine. During a break in proceedings, her mother approached me in the courthouse hallway. "How could you do this to her?" she asked, her voice breaking. "She tried to poison me," I said quietly. "And you're asking how I could turn her in?" Her mother had no response. Just walked away, understanding finally that her daughter had made choices that couldn't be unmade. By week 3, my wife had accepted a plea deal. 15 years for attempted murder and conspiracy. She'd get out when she was 49. She was lucky. The divorce was finalized while she was in county jail awaiting sentencing. I kept everything, the house, the accounts, the investments. She got nothing except the orange jumpsuit and the knowledge that she tried to murder me, and I'd responded by dismantling her completely. The waiter, her cousin Marcus, received a separate sentence. 10 years for conspiracy. His family stopped speaking to him. His life was over before it really began. But I found myself unable to celebrate. I'd won. I'd documented her crime. I'd turned her in. I'd protected myself and built an airtight case that would keep her imprisoned for over a decade. Every strategic decision had been perfect. Every move had been calculated. And I felt absolutely hollow. I started attending her sentencing hearings, sitting in the back gallery, watching her understand the full weight of what she'd done. She tried to kill me. I'd responded by ensuring she'd spend her most vital years locked away from the world. During one hearing, she turned and looked at me directly for the first time since her arrest. Her eyes were empty. Not remorseful. Just empty. I realized then that I'd become someone unrecognizable. Someone capable of watching another human being receive a 15-year sentence and calling it justice without flinching. My father called to congratulate me on handling the situation so effectively. My friends wanted to celebrate my survival. Everyone treated me like a victim who'd escaped a predator. But sitting alone in my house, the house my wife had wanted to inherit after my death, I understood that I'd become something darker than she was. She'd acted in impulse and desperation. I'd acted with precision and patience. I'd documented everything. I'd weaponized the system against her. I'd become a predator too. Just a more effective one. 6 months into her sentence, my wife attempted suicide in her cell. They found her before she succeeded. Psychiatric evaluation. Medication. The slow erosion of a person who understood the magnitude of her own actions and couldn't live with that knowledge. I received a letter from her smuggled out through a prison counselor. "I deserved what you did to me," she wrote. "I understand that now. But I need you to understand something too. You didn't just punish me for trying to kill you. You became a killer yourself. Just a slower one." I read those words in my empty house and felt the weight of them settle into my bones. She was right. I'd spent months documenting, calculating, strategizing. I'd turned her own weapon against her with surgical precision. I'd watched the system dismantle her life piece by piece. And I'd called it survival. But survival requires you to move forward. To rebuild. To become something new. I was just standing in the wreckage, satisfied that I'd destroyed the person who'd tried to destroy me. I started seeing a therapist. Not for redemption. I wasn't naive enough to believe that was possible. But to understand why I'd chosen systematic destruction over simple escape. Why I'd documented everything instead of just leaving. "You wanted her to know," my therapist said. "You wanted her to understand exactly what she tried to do and exactly what the consequences would be." She was right. I'd made sure my wife would spend every day of her 15-year sentence understanding that she tried to poison me and I'd responded by poisoning her life in return. We were both victims now. Just of different crimes. The ones we'd committed against each other. 2 years into her sentence, my wife stopped attempting suicide and started accepting her reality. She enrolled in prison education programs. She worked in the library. She wrote letters to victims' advocacy groups, discussing how she'd become capable of planning murder. She was rebuilding herself, slowly, from the rubble of her own choices and my systematic destruction of her. I heard about this through the prison counselor who sent me updates I never asked for. I realized then that I'd won the battle but lost the war. My wife was finding meaning in her confinement, purpose in her punishment. She was becoming someone new, someone shaped by accountability and consequences, yes, but also by the slow work of understanding herself. Meanwhile, I was still sitting in my empty house, unable to move forward. I sold the house and moved into an apartment downtown. Sparse. Minimal. A place where I could exist without the weight of my victory pressing down on me. I started volunteering at a legal aid clinic, helping people navigate the justice system. Not out of redemption. Out of a desperate need to understand why I'd been so effective at destroying another human being. One evening, I reviewed a case file for a woman being prosecuted for fraud. The details were mundane: financial manipulation, lying to a spouse, betrayal. Nothing unusual. But reading it, I thought about my wife. About how quickly she'd gone from planning my murder to understanding the horror of what she'd become. About how my systematic documentation and prosecution of her had accelerated that understanding but hadn't changed the fundamental reality. She tried to kill me and I'd responded by ensuring her imprisonment. I was no better than she was. Just better at hiding it behind the law. 5 years after her arrest, my wife was released early on good behavior. She'd served 7 years of her 15-year sentence. The parole board noted her genuine remorse, her education achievements, her consistent mental health management. She was deemed rehabilitated. I received a letter from her the day before her release. "I don't expect forgiveness," she wrote. "I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that I understand now what I was capable of. And I understand what you became because of it. We destroyed each other, Alexandra. You just did it more effectively." I didn't respond. But I attended her parole hearing, sitting in the back, watching her walk out of the courthouse with nothing but a change of clothes and the understanding that her life would never be what it was. She saw me as she left and stopped walking. We stood across from each other in the courthouse hallway, the woman who'd tried to poison me and the woman who'd spent 5 years ensuring her imprisonment. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "For everything." "I know," I replied. "But sorry doesn't undo what we both became." She nodded and walked away. I never saw her again. But I thought about her often, about how we'd both been casualties in a war neither of us had won. She tried to kill me out of desperation and greed. I'd responded by killing her systematically, using the law as my weapon. Neither of us had survived it intact. I won my case. I'd documented her crime. I'd ensured her imprisonment. But sitting alone in my apartment, I understood that victory had cost me everything. My marriage, my humanity, my ability to move forward. My wife had rebuilt herself in prison. Found meaning in her punishment. Become someone new. I was still waiting to become anything at all.